All right, class. First off, as always, good day. I'm glad you're here. Today, we are going to be going over trench life for these soldiers in World War One, and then at the very end, we're going to be talking about the Zimmerman telegram and how that played a role in the U.S. Involvement in World War One. So let's go ahead and get started. All right. So your objectives today, we're going to analyze the life soldiers had in the trenches. Sorry, I just had something to drink and now I'm just hiccuping them like crazy. We're going to examine the different diseases that soldiers got in trenches, and then we're going to create an argument on whether the U.S. would have joined the war if not for the Zimmerman telegram. All right, so your first question asks you to examine this picture and tell me, what do you see? What's going on? Look at the people in the background, the foreground from side to side. Okay. Um, Tell me what you see. The second question asks you, if there was an upcoming attack, let's say the enemy is like 100 yards away, do you think these guys are prepared to fight? Why or why not? Why would you say that? Okay, so write your response, pause the video, okay, because we're moving on in three, two, one. All right, so the best way to describe life in the trenches is hell. This was said by a lot of World War One veterans and historians. No one ever said, "Oh, well, it was quite lovely. I loved it." No, it was hell. One of the number one things that was common amongst the soldiers in the trenches was you're going to get sick. All right, you're going to catch some type of disease. Dysentery, which is an infection in your stomach in which like you have diarrhea and stuff like that. That was common. Chlorea, typhoid fever. And the thing is, you have to remember, look how close those guys were in that picture. Those guys actually had space. A lot of the soldiers were elbow to elbow next to each other and things like that. So if one person starts sneezing, coughing, things like that, remember, they didn't really cover their mouth like some people nowadays still don't. But nowadays we know, hey, cover your mouth. You're spreading the stuff. Back then, and everyone else is gonna get it too. So diseases like that spread quite commonly. The next one is trench foot. And if you look at that picture up on top, I'm sure you've already seen it. That is trench foot. Okay, actually, trench foot's a little bit more worse than that. As you can see, it's starting to um, kind of look like leathery in a sense. Um, that is trench foot because they had their feet in water. The water in trenches, when it rained, water goes into the trenches, into the holes. So sometimes, some places, the trenches were up to guys' waist, but a lot of times it was up to the middle of their leg, just like right below the knee type of thing. So their feet were constantly in water, and then they would take it out, when they would go to sleep, things like that, and then be back in, out, in for months on end, and it would look like that. Now, if you've ever taken a shower, your fingers and look like that, but this is constant. And what happens is it actually it dies the skin and some of that. So it starts to fester. It starts to eat the live tissue going up your leg, and it could go as really high. So you might have to cut it off if it got really bad. Could you cure it? Sure. Several days, airing it out, avoiding moisture, um, you know, uh, not letting it sweat too much, wearing sandals, try not to be on your feet too much, put some powders on it. Yeah. Next one is that bottom picture, trench teeth or trench mouth, I should say. This is an infection that causes the gums to inflame. That means that's an infection there. So if you look at that picture where it's like right where the teeth is, you see how it's kind of like whitish and it pops up? That's an inflammation. That's the where the gum pops up, and that is an infection of some sort. Okay. Now it's not little tiny little bump. No, you can see these things are just out there. If you look at the gums too, they're just red and they're just out there. That's what it is. And also you get ulcers. And if you look at that picture that where that black arrow is pointing at that white thing, and even let me move my little camera here. Come on, there we go. If you look at the bottom teeth on the side there, um, that's an ulcer, and that hurts like hell, you know. And yeah, it was really, really bad. How could you get it? Well, let's say you were eating something and you cut your gum. Then you started eating something that could get an infection. You started drinking water that wasn't clean. Um, you know, you're digging in your foot like that, and you start digging in your teeth like that. You got that now the gum, the funk in the feet now in your mouth, and it got now in that cut. Yeah, it's bad. The other thing is shell shock. Now, we know this now as PTSD, which is post traumatic stress disorder. Some of you guys in class know that, which is awesome. This is a devastating mental illness that paralyzes soldiers. And, these guys would be bombings going off and they'd just be in a hole, just, closing their eyes, holding themselves, things like that. And at that time, nobody really knew what was going on. So they would tell them, like, hey, you stop being a coward, stop hiding, come on, let's fight, you know. And some people went to trial on being a coward, or you were desertion, you try to leave. And it was shell shock, it was PTSD. Their nerves were shot, and a lot of soldiers, especially nowadays, they go through this, and it's a serious thing that these guys had to live with for the rest of their lives. All right. Now, here's a little fun, interesting thing. World War One is truly the first conflict in the world history where more people died due to combat and not diseases. Because if you look at all the other battles in history, people, the average Joe, die from diseases. Soldiers die from diseases. In battle, they may have lost 50,000, but with diseases, they probably lost like 70,000, 60,000. So this is the first conflict in which more people died in battle than in diseases, because of diseases. All right. All right. So question number one: if you had to choose one of these nasty things that soldiers got, when it comes to diseases, we're talking about all of it. Dysentery, malaria, typhoid fever, trench mouth, trench foot, or shell shock. If you had to pick one of them, which one would you say, okay, I'd rather have that than any other of those other ones? And explain why you would choose that. Okay, so pause the video, write your response, because we're moving on in 3, 2, 1. All right, so how did the average morning go for a soldier? Well, it was like this. In the morning, they had sentry duty, in which the soldiers had to be prepared for an attack on dawn. Okay, they had to be prepared to see, hey, is the other side coming? Because that is the opportune time to attack, right in the morning. Okay, so they would get one of two orders. One, stand two. Stand two means, hey, get your guns ready, stand against the edge of the trench, and keep your eye out. Okay. The other one was over the top, which means, hey, go over the top of the trench, we're attacking. Okay. So they heard either one or the other. Now, as time went on, their commanders would come around and do a kit and rifle inspection. And that's what you see in that top picture there. The commander is looking at the soldier's feet. Do they have trench foot? Do they have trench mouth? How is their rifle? Is it clean? Because you have to remember, if it's not clean, especially if it's like bolt action or something, there's dirt, grime, and some of that. That's the only thing that will make it jam. If they have the clips, is it clean? So that no dirt gets up in there and it starts, causing problems. Making a misfire and things like that. The other thing is they got to eat, mealtime. They got some food, and they actually got some alcohol. In France, they got wine. In Britain, I believe they got whiskey. Here's the problem, though. As the war went on, sometimes some soldiers didn't get food. They would get alcohol, but no food, because again, food was scarce. They'd be doing rations. Hey, your group doesn't eat today. Your group doesn't eat. Your group does. Your doesn't. Your doesn't. Your does. And they would have to alternate, like maybe every 3 days you get to eat and the other two don't get to. They would do stuff like that. So we'll be talking about that in a little bit too. Now, then in the afternoon time came the chores, right? You never escaped the chores. First thing, hey, fill up the sandbags. So you see in the picture right there, the closest to the side up on top, those are sandbags. Those guys filled up those bags, tied them up, and used them to secure walls. They repaired trenches. Okay? They dig new trenches, see if they can get closer, see if they can flank the other side. They would pump out water. When I said pump out water, it's not like they get one of those machines and just, no, they basically got buckets, scooped and tossed it. Um, and then they dug latrines. Now, if you don't know what latrines are, they're basically bathrooms. Yeah, they would basically dig holes and like put up a little tent, and then once that got full, they would put dirt on it, mark it, and then go elsewhere. Okay, and it's not like they could put a latrine right near the trench. It had to be to the side or in the back, so people could, you know, would walk through it, and it would be, pop in a squat right in the middle of the battlefield. You know. After that, though, time for relaxation. Some people slept. Some people wrote letters. Some were reading cards. Some were making art. Yeah, some guys actually took the casings from the bullets and made artwork out of it. Made little statues, made a portrait. So the thing is, these guys were bored when there was no fighting going on. And again, there was no fighting like every single day, every single minute. No, they were just sitting there, just are they gonna do anything? No, dang it. So again, they're in water, they're they're tired, they're on edge, they're. So yeah, life for soldiers wasn't that great. But in the evening time, this is where things got kind of dangerous. Um, they did more dangerous thing in the night in the cover of night. Some soldiers would go out in no man's land and they would repair trenches, they would repair the barbed wire fences and things like that. They would do night patrols, which basically is they would crawl from their trench to as close as they can to the other side and spy on the enemy. Watch to see how they're patrolling. Do they notice, hey, there's some group over here, a group over there, but nothing in the middle here? They look for that kind of stuff. You know, Night attacks rarely happen. Night attacks didn't happen as often as movies show and things like that. They did happen, but it wasn't like every day or things like that. Okay. Now, some soldiers slept during the night. Some took watch. Thing is, though, it would rain. Okay, it would rain, and sometimes these large rats would fall into the trenches. Now, how big do these rats get? They're about the size of a good house cat, and they could weigh anything from 11 to 22 pounds. These were big rats. And the thing is, they got that big because they ate the dead bodies of horses and men in no man's land. Okay, there were no dogs out in no man's land, because that dog would have been shot and killed or blown up. There was no squirrels because again, trees are blown up, everything like that. But rats, yeah, there was plenty of rats, and as you see in this picture right here, um, this dog caught quite a bit of them. If you see, there's like really two big ones right there. Um, and that's the thing, when the water would come in, these rats would see a body, and the person might be sleeping, so the rat might crawl up the sandbag and then start latching onto someone's ear and try to bite it off, bite their eye, their nose, their lip, bite their leg, you know. So imagine this like big cat-sized creature, but it's a rat and is trying to bite your ear off, bite your lip off. Yeah, it wasn't that great. Now, remember I told you guys, food was scarce. Sometimes it took days, sometimes even a week to get food to a certain area. If that was the case for you, and the only thing you had to eat were rats, those big rats that ate the bodies of dead things, people and horses, would you eat the rat? Would you eat it? Why or why not? Explain why you would, explain why you wouldn't. Okay? If you need a writing prompt, there's one on the bottom. If I were to the point of starving, I would slash wouldn't eat a rat because explain. Now, I'm not talking the tiny rat. I'm talking those big giant ones. All right. Would you eat those rats if you were in those soldiers' position? Okay. So think about it. Pause the video because we're moving on in three, two, one. All right. So let's talk about the United States a little bit. Woodrow Wilson, President Wilson, he won the 1916 election by saying, "I am the peace candidate. We have not joined World War One because I said we wouldn't, and I kept my word." You know, which he did. He didn't send any soldiers over. Okay, but remember, the Lusitania was blown up. The Suez um, ship was destroyed in half by the Germans, and yet we still didn't go to war with them. Now, in 1917, in January, a German official named Arthur Zimmerman was sent this cable. This is the actual cable that was sent to him um, by the German ambassador, or to the German ambassador in Mexico. Okay, his job was to take it to the Mexican government. Okay, the the message has an offer, and that's what those numbers are. It's a coded message, and this is the offer that Mexico was making, that Germany was making to Mexico. They were saying, if the U.S. joined the war and went against Germany, Germany is saying, hey, if you attack them, we promise we will help you take back the land that you lost to America, the lost land. And just in case you're wondering, well, what lost land? If you look at a map of the United States, the state of Texas, New Mexico, Arizona, California, Nevada, Colorado, Utah, parts of Oregon, um, parts of Idaho, that area once belonged to Mexico. And there's Germany is saying, we will help you get that back if the United States joins the war, goes against us, and then you attack them. We will come and help you out. This message is intercepted and it's released to the American public, and the people are pissed at Germany. Germany then says on February 1st, 1917, you know what? We're going to go back to the old ways of fighting in the seas. Remember, up to this point, they had the Suez Pledge. They were going to pop out of their U-boats, tell people, hey, stop your boats. We're not going to shoot you. We just want to see, make sure you have no guns, weapons going to Britain or France. Remember that? Well, now they're saying they're going back to the old ways. They're going to shoot down every single boat that comes through that's going towards Britain or France. Now, why did they go back to this? Because the thing is, Germany believed two things. One, they were on the verge of starving out Britain and France. They're like, we're so close to starving them out, you know. And the other thing is, they believed the U.S. wouldn't fight. You know, they sunk the Lusitania that killed 138 American citizens. The Suez had American citizens on it, was attacked. The Zimmerman telegram would basically slap America in the face, saying, telling Mexico, hey, we'll help you take back that land. And the US still hasn't done anything. So Germany's like, they're not going to do anything. We did all this stuff to them and they still haven't done anything. We might as well go back to the old ways. So that's what happened. From February 3rd to March 21st, they sank 6 merchant ships in the Atlantic Ocean. And Germany's like, oh, see, they're not doing anything. They're not doing anything. Then came April 2nd, 1917. President Wilson calls for a special session of Congress and asks them for a declaration of war against Germany. And he gets it. Now, I don't know if you know this or not, but the president cannot just declare war. He has to have Congress's approval to do that. So, Wilson asked for it, he gets it, and now the United States is in World War One. All right, so here's your next question. If the Germans hadn't sent that Zimmerman telegram, do you think the U.S. would have ever joined the war? What do you think? Do you think they would have eventually joined, say, yeah, you know what, we don't like those Germans, we're gonna sign up? Or do you think they'd be like, no, no, you guys, what you guys handle that World War thing, you guys, that's you guys. What do you think? If Germany never sent that message to Mexico, do you think the U.S. ever would have joined World War One? Okay. So think about it. Pause the video. Write it down because we're moving on in three, two, one. Now we've come to your exit ticket. The first, remember, you're only answering one of these two questions. The first one says, how long do you think you could last in a trench in the same conditions as the soldiers in World War One? Same outfits, same this and that, everything. The food situation, the rat situation, the diseases, all that stuff, the trench foot, trench mouth. And why do you think you'd last that long? The second question says some soldiers who had shell shock were called cowards and they were put on trial for cowardness and desertion. Do you think we as Americans have a clear understanding of what these soldiers go through? Or do you think that we don't have any idea unless we experience that ourselves? You know, when people say, "Oh, I know what you mean. I can just imagine," and it's like, no, no, you cannot imagine. You have no idea what it's like to be a soldier in Afghanistan, Iraq. So, what do you think? Do you think we have a clear understanding about PTSD and shell shock, or do you think it's something that we could never know unless we've experienced it ourselves? And tell me why do you think that way? Okay, so once you finish the extra ticket, you are done with this lesson. Hopefully, you learned something new. Hopefully, you enjoyed it. Okay. With that being said, guys, you take care, you be safe, and I'll see you later. Okay.